Welcome back to the Explainer. Today we're taking a super delicious turn to master a real classic, homemade Thai sour soup, famously known as Kaeng Som. If you've ever tried to make this at home, you already know it's a dish with these incredibly complex, vibrant flavors, but getting that balance just right, it's kind of an art form. So today we're going to break down some really specific, simple, traditional techniques for the everyday home cook. We're literally looking at the anatomy of the perfect bowl, and our main focus is going to be on how preparing your veggies and your fish the right way is the absolute key to nailing this recipe. Okay, let's dive into this because honestly, we've all been there. You follow a recipe to the letter, you gather all the ingredients, but when you actually sit down to eat, your homemade sour soup is just, well, watery. It's totally missing that deep, hearty richness. That incredibly thick, aromatic broth you get at your favorite restaurant. So why the huge disconnect? Well, the secret is that the biggest mistake home cooks make actually happens long before the soup even starts boiling. It really all comes down to how you prepare and utilize your proteins and vegetables. And that brings us right to section 1, prepping veggies and fish, the true foundation of flavor. Let's look at how organizing your cutting board transforms the entire dish. Check out this brilliant strategy using a large tilapia. We're deploying a total divide and conquer method here. Instead of just throwing the whole fish into the pot and hoping for the best, you divide it. The less visually appealing parts, like the head and the tail, are sectioned off specifically to be boiled. This creates your rich, sweet fish stock. Meanwhile, you set aside the prime meat pieces to be deep fried for a super satisfying, crispy texture. Literally, this one preparation step elevates the dish from a basic soup to a dynamic, multi-textured meal. Now, for those meat pieces heading to the fryer, your prep is absolutely crucial if you want to avoid a total kitchen disaster. First up, you'll want to lightly salt the fish so that flavor really penetrates the meat. With the absolute game changer, patting the fish completely dry. Seriously, if you skip this, you're going to have hot oil exploding all over your stove, and nobody wants that. Once it's dry, drop those pieces into extremely hot oil. That high heat shock makes the fish meat incredibly fluffy, beautifully golden, and perfectly crispy. Okay, so let's see how this exact same prep strategy applies to our vegetables. You really can't just toss everything in at once. You need a timeline. First, separate and chop up your hard veggies like daikon radish. Then, prep your softer ones like napa cabbage. The timing here is everything. Those hard veggies need to go into that bubbling, fragrant fish stock early on. This makes sure they soften up perfectly and soak in all that savory broth, which absolutely saves you from a weirdly textured soup where some veggies are mushy while others are still stubbornly crunchy. Moving on to section 2, the heart of the thick broth. We've got our prep done, so now it's time to build that perfect base. You know those fish heads and tails we boiled earlier? Well, this is where they shine. Carefully pick the cooked meat straight from the bones. And hey, you can totally keep the skin in there for a more rustic home-style feel. But the ultimate thickening secret? You take this boiled fish meat and pound it together with your sour curry paste in a mortar until it forms this incredibly fine, smooth paste. When this paste dissolves into your broth, the fish acts as a natural thickener. It gives the soup this incredible body and a deep, sweet flavor that literally coats the back of a spoon. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this charming piece of Thai culinary wisdom. If you don't use the mortar washing water, the curry won't be delicious. Think about it. Once you've scraped the pounded fish and curry paste into your pot, there's still a treasure trove of flavor clinging to the inside of that mortar. So you ladle some of your hot broth into the mortar, give it a good swirl to catch every last aromatic bit, and pour it right back into the pot. It's this awesome zero-waste step that guarantees maximum flavor. All right, next up is section 3, sequencing the seasoning. Kaeng Som is famous for hitting salty, sour, and sweet notes all at once, and the order you add them is critical. So the crucial point here is that you absolutely must build and lock in your salty notes first. Use salt for your base layer and then a really high-quality fish sauce for that beautiful, complex aroma. Once that's in, taste it. You have to be completely happy with the deep, savory saltiness before you even think about touching the sugar or the sour tamarind juice. If you jump the gun and add the sweet and sour too early, fixing the salt later becomes a nightmare, and you usually end up with a really muddled, confusing flavor. And here's a really quick convenience tip for you home cooks. Please don't panic if you don't have traditional palm sugar sitting in your pantry. Regular white granulated sugar works perfectly fine as a substitute. The whole goal is just to balance out the harshness of the sour elements, and white sugar handles that beautifully. Plus, it dissolves super easily into the hot broth, saving you an extra trip to the grocery store. Okay, with the broth seasoned to absolute perfection, we bring it back up to a rolling boil on high heat and toss in our soft veggies, the cabbage and greens we prepped earlier. They literally only take a moment to cook. Then, at the very end, we drop in our fresh plump shrimp. Shrimp cooks in an absolute flash, so it has to go in last to avoid getting tough and rubbery. And this is vital. Once the shrimp is in, let it boil, but do not overstir. Just let the heat do its work gently, so your broth stays clear and the shrimp stay intact. We are almost ready to eat. Section 4, the secret zing. The cooking is done, but how we assemble this bowl is just as important. When it comes time to serve, the golden rule is separation. We've got a pot full of hot sour soup with veggies and shrimp and a plate of that beautifully crispy fried fish we made earlier. You want to pour the hot soup into the serving bowl first, and only then place the crispy fried fish right on top. If you drop that gorgeous fried fish into the main boiling pot on the stove, it's going to instantly turn into soggy mush and completely ruin all that careful prep work we talked about at the start. And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate finishing secret, the Thai concept of jeed. It's basically this sudden, bright zing of flavor. Now, I know we already used tamarind for sourness in the pot, but tamarind is a deep, heavy kind of sour. To get that vibrant jeed factor, you squeeze fresh lime juice directly into your individual serving bowl right before you take your first bite. It cuts through the richness, elevates the aroma, and literally awakens your entire palate. So we've covered the brilliant dual use of the fish, why separating your vegetable cooking times matters, pounding that awesome broth thickener, and exactly how to sequence those complex flavors. Now that you've got the complete structural blueprint to finally conquer watery homemade curries, I want to leave you with a question. What is your ultimate must-have vegetable for your own homemade Kaeng Som? Take these techniques, head into your kitchen, and make this incredibly flavorful dish totally your own. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep on cooking.